Alice, sitting by the window in her room, sighed as she contemplated the recent events when she was separated from Iska inside the vortex. While lost in thought, she was startled by Rin's voice calling her. Alice explained that she wasn't thinking about Iska. Rin, confused, responded by mentioning Iska's name. Alice, stuttering, tried to explain everything to Rin. After hearing Alice's explanation, Rin sighed briefly and then said that if Alice was indeed interested in Iska, she would arrange a fight between them, as they had already encountered each other 3 times in neutral territory, making the city the best place for a showdown. Excited by the plan, Alice eagerly looked forward to her upcoming battle with Iska. The scene shifted to the central headquarters of the Empire, where Jin was reprimanding Mismas, who knelt before him, apologizing profusely. Nin and Iska, witnessing this, said there was no need for such a deep apology. However, Mismas replied that she felt she hadn't apologized enough. Jin agreed with her and proceeded to list the mistakes Mismas had made in the past. The captain then lowered his head, turned towards Iska and Nin, and continued to apologize for causing so much trouble. Iska, seeing this, asked the captain not to dwell on it. Upon hearing Iska's response, Captain Mismas smiled and thanked him. With all the issues resolved, Mismas then touched her left shoulder, sensing that something was amiss with it. Meanwhile, the elevator door opened and Rizia entered Unit N07's room, greeting Iska and the others. She had come to give them a new mission. Rizia presented them with a new mission, where Unit N07 was tasked with infiltrating the sovereignty and capturing the Queen of Nebulous. Upon hearing the mission explanation, Iska was taken aback, and Jin mentioned that Rizia's jokes had gone too far. Iska replied that he had often undertaken impossible missions, but this one felt truly insurmountable. Feeling that it was futile to refuse the mission, Jin then asked for the mission details and how they would infiltrate the sovereignty, as they had a device for checking spiritual energy. In the Empire, the spirit symbols possessed by ordinary witches were commonly used to check their magical status and also served as a substitute for passports. In the sovereignty, those without a spirit symbol were suspected of being spies from the Empire, making it difficult to gain entry to the nebulous sovereignty. To carry out the infiltration, Rizia had her own method, which she would reveal in the next 3 days. On the other hand, Rin and Alice were in the neutral city of Ain. They had been in the neutral city for 3 days, waiting for Iska to arrive. Alice grumbled about why Iska hadn't come, especially since they had always met up until now. Rin then speculated that Iska might have died due to the vortex eruption, but before Rin could finish her sentence, Alice cut her off, confident that Iska was still alive and that they would resolve everything. Rin, not daring to contradict Alice's statement, could only remain silent. Alice, who had grown tired of waiting, then suggested that they split up to search for Iska's whereabouts. Rin, bowing, complied with her suggestion. As she obediently lowered her head, she addressed Alice as the next Queen of Nebulous. Currently, there were internal issues within the Nebulous sovereignty, where other families were waiting for the opportunity to seize the throne. Additionally, Alice's younger and older siblings were working on improving their image for the next queen's election. This was the perfect time for Alice to gain more sympathy and prepare for the future. Since Alice couldn't continue to be fixated on the Imperial Army, Rin planned to reshape the destinies of both Alice and Iska. Iska and the others were questioning why Rizia had requested an infiltration of the sovereignty, especially when it was difficult for even residents of neutral territories to enter. Seeing Mismas continuously holding her shoulder, Nain became curious and asked her about the condition of her shoulder. Concerned for her, Iska asked Nain to provide Mismas with medicine. Nain then went to retrieve the medicine and asked Mismas to unzip her jacket. The captain complied with Nain's request, and after removing her jacket, she rolled up her shirt sleeve, feeling something strange. When she revealed the peculiar mark on Mismas' shoulder, there was a green symbol there. She who saw the symbol was immediately startled, followed by Nain stepping back in disbelief. As if unable to accept what was happening, Mismas tried to deny it while rubbing the symbol on her shoulder. She kept trying to explain to her friends, accompanied by tears welling up in her eyes. He then asked if the captain knew what was happening. Mismas, who was confused, couldn't answer, and Jin continued by stating that it was the result of the vortex. He analyzed that when Iska and Mismas fell into the vortex, what they saw was the spirit's form, and then the spirit possessed Mismas because she was a suitable vessel for the spirit. She was deeply shocked to learn that she had become a witch. Seeing Mizmiz's condition, Jin continued his words, saying that Mizmiz had hit the jackpot by acquiring a spirit symbol. If they wanted to be sure, the Senate could investigate further, but if they found out that Mizmiz had become a witch, she would undoubtedly be executed. Seeing Mizmiz in such a distressed state, Iska then approached her and said they would follow whatever decision she made, and he asked Mizmiz to make her choice. Iska gave her two options. The first was to surrender herself, and they would do everything to mitigate her punishment. Perhaps she would continue to be watched, but she would likely be allowed to live outside the capital. The second option was to hide the spirit symbol and continue to be their captain. Hearing this statement, Mizmiz was surprised, which was followed by her saying that if the symbol was discovered, they would also be in trouble. Jin, in his usual calm tone, said that it didn't matter because they were his subordinates, and they would follow his orders. After hearing the words from her unit members, Mizmiz cried, and she didn't want to stop being their captain. Iska responded that if that's what Mizmiz wanted, they had no reason to refuse. With tears streaming down her face, Mizmiz smiled and thanked Iska and the others. The scene shifted to Alice's room, where she lay on her bed, exhausted from her fruitless search. Rin, who was by her side, suggested changing their plan and stopping the search in the city of Ain. Alice quickly rejected Rin's suggestion and instead opened a book about the city of Ain, searching for places that Iska might visit. Meanwhile, Iska stood in front of the glass window in his room. His attention was diverted by the sound of his bedroom door opening, and behind the door were Neen and Jin, who had come to visit him. Jin and Neen then entered his room to discuss Mizmiz's situation. They needed to keep the spirit symbol that Mizmiz possessed a secret because, given the previous circumstances, Mizmiz would undoubtedly be suspected as a spy from the Empire. Continuing to a central fountain in the peaceful neutral city of Ain, where children ran around and young couples conversed. There, Captain Mizmiz sat on a bench with Iska. Iska apologized for bringing Mizmiz to Ain, feeling like he was hiding her. Mizmiz didn't mind the decision made by Iska, and in fact, felt more relaxed in the city because no one questioned her spirit symbol. As Iska gazed at the tranquil neutral city, he pondered something. Then he went on to tell the story of how the Empire once dominated the world, and 60% of the world's population was considered the same. However, everything changed when the Empire discovered the secret behind the celestial bodies, which was an undefined energy known as spirits. After hearing this story, the captain fell into deep thought and squeezed her shoulder. Iska then continued his dialogue, expressing his belief that there would come a time when Mizmiz wouldn't need to hide her symbol anymore, and he, Neen, and Jin would always support her. Upon hearing Iska's words, she felt moved, wiping away the tears that had welled up in her eyes. To lighten the mood, Mizmiz went to buy some drinks. Meanwhile, on the other side, Alice was walking through the neutral city, feeling the tranquility of the place as she pondered about when the nebulous sovereignty would ever have peace like what existed in the city of Ain. Back where Iska was, he was contemplating that Captain Mizmiz was one of the victims of the spirit symbols during this never-ending war. However, he was more concerned about the mission assigned by Rizia, which was to capture the Queen of Nebulas. Even if he succeeded in capturing the Queen, the Empire and the successors were unlikely to release her, potentially worsening the conflict. Suddenly, a girl appeared who seemed to be searching for something. The girl suddenly called out to Iska and asked for permission to sit beside him. Iska, slightly surprised, furrowed his brow and addressed the girl as Alice. She placed both hands on her forehead to shield her eyes from the sunlight. After Alice looked more closely, she was astonished to realize that the person in front of her was Iska, whom she had been searching for all this time. She then mentioned that she had been trying hard to find Iska in the past few days. "Looking for me?" Iska replied with a confused expression. Alice, blushing at her own words, asked Iska to forget what she had said. They continued to gaze at each other, exchanging shy smiles and bashful glances. To lighten the mood, Iska offered Alice a seat. Alice, feeling shy, initially declined Iska's offer, stating that they were enemies, and if anyone saw her sitting next to him, she would be scolded by Rin. Iska, feeling uncomfortable about Alice's situation, then stood up. Alice rejected the suggestion, and in the end, they sat next to each other. They fell silent for a moment until Alice murmured that she was grateful not to have seen Iska since the recent incident. Alice then asked what Iska was doing in the neutral city. Iska replied that he had come to the city of Ain to daydream and think about something. Curious about what Iska was thinking, Alice tried to get him to talk, but Iska said he wouldn't tell anyone except Rin. Alice, considering that they were on friendly terms despite being enemies, believed that in the neutral city there was a ceasefire. She then leaned closer to Iska and urged him to share, to which Iska responded with silence. Rin, who had been behind Alice, called her name, startling Alice, who quickly stood up to explain the situation to Rin and blamed Iska. Rin, having suspected that Iska had survived the recent incident, then gave Alice and Iska canned drinks. Without hesitation, Alice drank hers, followed by Iska. However, as he was about to drink it, he found the aroma strange. Alice then informed Iska that it was a lemon apple drink. Even though he had never heard of it, Iska still drank it, and upon seeing this, Rin displayed a surprised expression. After he drank the juice, he fell silent and suddenly staggered, falling onto the bench beside him. Alice, confused about what was happening to Iska, received an apology from Rin. She explained that she had put a sleeping pill in the drink that Iska consumed, not expecting him to actually drink it. Rin then said, "The sovereignty has poisoned me," implying that Iska would now see Alice as a threat and keep his distance from her. Hearing Rin's response, Alice was puzzled about what to do next. Rin then had the idea to take Iska hostage and lifted Iska's body. Miss, who had returned from buying drinks, was shocked to see Iska's body on Rin's shoulder. When she tried to call his name, Alice stopped her, followed by a provocation that she would hold Iska hostage because he was a threat from the sovereignty. Miss, requesting Alice to return Iska, activated her spirit symbol. Seeing this, Alice was slightly surprised, and Miss ran towards her, but Alice stopped her with her ice powers and then left Miss, taking Iska with her. Meanwhile, Rizia was reporting to her superiors that Iska had been captured by the Disaster Witch of Ice and requested further orders.